Hello, guten Tag und grüß Gott. Today is Monday, June 20th, 2022. And it's a holiday. As a matter of fact, it's our most recent federal holiday. And it's called, goes by the name of Juneteenth. I'm going to have to do a little bit of study on this because I do know that this holiday was created to remember the end of slavery, whenever that happened. Evidently, slavery didn't just end all at once because, the Civil War was won and it's supposed to be the end of slavery. There was a proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation that said, all slaves are free. But you have to remember that was a time back in the 1800s where communication just didn't happen all that rapidly. And evidently it was General Sherman that came into, I could be wrong about which general that was, but he came into Texas and, had some sort of an assembly and proclaimed that all slaves are free, and the slaves, wherever they were on a plantation, maybe on the largest plantation where these guys were working, they were perplexed, evidently. So this needs to be looked into a little bit because it's now a significant holiday for the United States, and that, who knows, it may be adopted elsewhere. I mean, to commemorate the end of slavery in the New World is a wonderful thing. I mean, it's in terms of wonderful, I'm not so sure, but our history should be remembered, not just selective history, but all of our history. And so I'm reaching back now to the destruction of monuments and so forth. That has been so popular here in the last few days because there was a guy on a horse and evidently he was a slave owner back in the 1700s or 1800s when slavery was legal. And, that just makes him a bad guy, because, he availed himself of the legal standing to do business, and so. But anyway, yeah, and so evidently we're not going to see some of these guys on horseback or in statuary. But I think a lot of them have been moved because the colleges especially have been real strident about that as to what should be done with, some of the monuments that, harken back to the days of slavery or something, that nature. The Civil War, of course, the North won the Civil War, so I suppose Northern generals are okay, but Southern ones are not. Well, that's, the victor always writes the history. Anyway, yeah, Juneteenth. There you have it. Today is a holiday. And I guess I'm ready to do another video. So what I want to do is just kind of go through the, to commemorate or to give my version of the Zeitgeist. In other words, the climate of what's happening right now. So one of the things that was fairly interesting is that the district attorney in charge of San Francisco was recalled. Okay. Now, the reason he was recalled was because people were kind of tired of this guy letting criminals out, so this has been, basically a Democrat or a progressive agenda is to empty the jails, I mean, one reason was the COVID, you put packing people together, everybody gets COVID and that's an additional expense to take care of the people and so forth. But among the people that were released were some pretty bad dudes. And so we've seen rising crime in the cities especially, but also in the countryside a bit because the the economic times now are a little bit uncertain, not just a little bit uncertain, but it's actually very uncertain. Um, so so we have rising crime, and that upends the progressive agenda because they don't want to put people in jail, even though they need to be jailed. And then uh, you know th- they say, well, let's release nonviolent criminals. Okay, well, that's a bit of a sticky wicket, because how do you really know, when a person is incarcerated, that he's nonviolent because he was incarcerated for a nonviolent crime? Does that make him nonviolent? Not necessarily. He could be a bad actor, and some of these people have actually come out and have killed cops and have killed family, and the most liberal city on the West Coast, San Francisco, has had it up to here, with crime. That's amazing, um, that they actually decided to do something about it. And so the next DA, whoever is appointed or elected, I'm sure there's an interim guy because he was just thrown out of office. He's going to be a little more judicious about how he empties the jails. Excuse me. So anyway, since my last video, at least a couple of weeks have gone by, and I'm not so sure that I have to actually make videos every week as I had promised, because what the heck? Who's going to watch this stuff anyway? It's just me talking and basically memorializing what's going on from my perspective. That's it. So, I noticed that in the Wall Street Journal, I kind of look for the obscure news, the things that are kind of unusual. And of course, I do have to cover the big picture as well. So let me start with the big picture. The big picture is that inflation is now the highest since in 4 decades. Okay, so the Feds decided to raise. I think they still call it the rediscount rate. In other words, that's a rate that banks have to pay for borrowing. From they raised it to from I think it was like 1.25 to 1.5 and maybe 1.75. I'm not sure exactly where that fell. But anyway, it's still less than 2%, that the banks have to pay. Now, of course, that's not the CPI. CPI is calculated differently, but this is basically the cost of money. So now, we also had the Fed chair, I think Volcker was back in the 80s. We hit nearly 20% on that in order to stave off, rampant inflation and, kind of, tone down the economy of the 70s. So I don't know. Hopefully we don't get to that 20% level, but a lot of people are thinking, that the raise of the rate, of 75 basis points or 0.75% is just not enough, to slow down the economy, because the economy is really starting to take off, even though we have shortages and everything is going up in price. A lot of money is available because the Fed also printed a bunch. I mean, it was that thing, the money machine goes where? Yeah, well, money was handed out left and right. Everybody got money, and nobody had during COVID. The rents didn't have to be paid and all that kind of stuff. But you run into supply chain problems, and destroy the economy, you don't even know exactly what's going to happen. So it's kind of a bad deal. Cryptocurrency is on a meltdown. I mean, cryptocurrency has almost lost like 30% of its value. And cryptocurrency is kind of an interesting thing. I wish I could understand it a little better, but it's value by fiat. Whatever people want to pay for cryptocurrency, and a lot of business is being done. I know Tesla had a few $billion of assets in cryptocurrency, and of course that's been um, decimated right now. So, but cryptocurrency was expected to fluctuate up and down quite a bit, and it kind of goes with the economy. Um, so if the market dumps, well, cryptocurrency will dump with it, and I'm not sure what the mechanism is on that. But nevertheless, this whole thing, about virtual money and cryptocurrency, NFTs, the non-fungible tokens, through which you can actually own property. You just can't exchange it for something. You just have to. It's non-fungible, so you can't use it as currency, but you can actually, buy and sell and trade and that kind of thing for equal value, or whatever people want to pay for it. So you can own real estate, through in the crypto world or the metaverse. Let's talk about the metaverse for a second, because that's a big deal. We now have cocktails in virtual bars. I'm not kidding you. You can go as an avatar and go to, one of them was mentioned, Wishers, wherever the hell that is in the metaverse, and they check your ID, so you have to be 18 to be able to buy buy a virtual cocktail. But so it's kind of like a game, and you do have to pay for the privilege in it, and the alcohol manufacturers are jumping on this thing like crazy. It's going to be quite a thing. Miller beer, has got virtual bars. Heineken. Oh yeah, the Dutch jumped on this like crazy. So yeah, the metaverse. I don't know. I'm gonna have to see whether I can, get myself a dry martini. Probably really dry, right? Because you can't drink a virtual martini. I mean, crapola, right? So anyway, what else is going on? Well, mostly economically bad news. Okay, rising crime, that's bad news. And about rising crime, I just want to mention a few things. What happened. New York back in the 80s, was such a pit. People didn't visit because the crime was everywhere. There were gangs, of kids running around, teenagers. They called wolfing, and they were just doing bad shit. And there's a guy that came along, the new mayor of New York, and he decided, what, we've got this thing all wrong. We don't punish small crimes. We just let them go, okay, or maybe an admonishment or something like this. And he decided, what, we're going to crack down on small crimes. And so Giuliani, the mayor, saved New York. It's really, really something, by cracking down. And they had stop and frisk laws, but they saw gangsters, that in baggy pants, to see whether they have guns. And a lot of times they found guns, so the gangsters didn't come out with guns so much anymore, they actually had to hide in the car, and do a drive-by of something, but they just didn't carry the guns. So, some of the progressive and liberals were really complaining about these laws. How can you, punish somebody, for stealing an apple or things like this? And I'm not sure whether it actually went that far, but it was Giuliani did take that seriously, for theft and so forth. The punishment was swift. If they caught you, you stole something in the store. They got you. And so what that amounted to is that it had an impact on the larger crimes, the murders and all, the things, because it got these guys that seemingly do innocent kind of things, small things. Actually they had bigger fare in mind. They wanted to do something more. So anyway, and so a lot of big criminals came off the street. Crime started to plummet in New York, and it became a destiny again, for families and so forth. But as I mentioned before, the liberals, really, you're gentrifying the neighborhoods, and taking away the color of crime. These were, I saw women on TV complaining about, what is being done to New York. And, you got to be thinking, these are women that were out there probably vulnerable, and have been through stick-ups, and they think it's okay. I'm not sure I buy all that kind of thinking. And that's why we need government, and we need rational government, so that, the government shouldn't be influenced by stupid people, okay? Like Larry David said in a commercial, about, I don't know. Anyway, he was dressed up as among the founding fathers, and they were talking about, let everybody vote. And Larry David said, and what do you mean, let everybody vote? That's a disaster. We can't have a democracy where everybody votes. Even stupid people, And so actually, I think initially, you did have to be a stakeholder of something, to vote. And even today, in most states, criminals can't vote because they temporarily lose their citizenship, as it should be. Who the hell wants to be ruled by criminals? Give me a break. It's bad enough that we have criminals in government already that we voted in. Jesus. Anyway, so yeah, and in California, we don't punish small crimes at all. In fact, you can steal up to about $1,000 worth of stuff in a grocery store. We're starting to see, stuff being locked up behind lock and key. This is like some sort of a third world country here in California. This is just bizarre, And what the Democrats with a supermajority have done here. They certainly haven't improved anything. Crime is high. The store owners, and the business climate, that's another thing. Companies are moving out of California. It's just crazy, As a matter of fact, Illinois may be a state like that, California, heavily Democratic, because Caterpillar is moving their headquarters out of Peoria, Illinois. Yeah, well, so I don't know who's going to be left in California, immigrants and criminals? I don't know. Well, I'm going to be left because I like it here. So, another interesting article about what's going on in California, bumblebees are classified as fish. Okay, that sounds crazy as hell. But evidently there was, the farmers were looking, especially the almond farmers that really depend on bees. They were looking through all of the laws and so forth, all the statutes in California about bumblebees. Could they be, are they already a protected species? Because, the state is about going to clamp down, on, bumblebees, and they need them because they need to pollinate those almond blossoms. That's a huge deal. And, we now have almond milk, and, the almond crop in California is a big piece of the economy, actually. The agricultural economy for sure. And, nuts altogether, wine, that kind of thing. So, yeah, so there is no category for the bumblebees to be uh, considered an endangered species. But some judge in California just said, well, fish have been the word fish has been used to protect, snails and all kinds of things, that are not really fish, So let's put the bumblebees in that too. And so it looks like the farmers are going to be pummeled, with regulations about bumblebees. Anyway, I'm sure that just won't make their business any easier, and the costs of almonds and almond milk and the things we love, will go up. And the wisdom of California goes on. I mean, we've got to stop this. A supermajority of any party is, from my perspective, is just a really bad thing. You know, maybe if we'd all have, if we'd have a super majority of Republicans, maybe that would be a bad thing. Well, the Republicans would be pro-business, so they would keep things humming, So if there's going to be a supermajority, I prefer a conservative supermajority. Let's see. Okay. The Ukraine war. Well, the tragedy goes on. We're now like over 100 days, I think like 120 days or so in the Ukraine war, and it's not getting any better. The Russians are consolidating their grip on the Donbass, the east area, and they're trying to get some of the southern area of the Ukraine also. And the Ukrainians are just, we've already appropriated $40 million worth of military help to them, not people, but equipment, guns, ammo, so on and so forth. And just recently another billion, but somehow the stuff hasn't shown up, so I guess it takes a while, to get all this old equipment out of mothballs, in the US and around the world. Some of it is showing up, but not much of it, because the Russians, have got the advantage, although they're not moving much beyond the eastern area, because the Donbass is kind of friendly to the Russians. It's populated to a great extent by Russian speakers or Russians. Although I think that the Ukrainians and the Russians, I mean, let's face it, that's like the Brits and the Germans or the French and the, it just shouldn't be. Anyway. And Putin, of course, blames the West, saying that's all your fault. And I'm going to hold up a picture of the Wall Street Journal from this weekend. And there is Vladimir Putin, saying, well, it's all your fault, we had to invade, Give me a break. This doesn't make any sense. Anyhow, let's see, what else do I have for today? Oh, yeah, when the Afghan leadership turned over Afghanistan to the Taliban, well, they escaped, I mean, they left, they packed up, and they're now living in really expensive villas throughout the world, the president and, his underlings, that had to leave, and turn the government of Afghanistan back to the people that had the greater will. They had the greater will. So, my son recently found this in the store. This is kind of an interesting can. It says liquid death, right? Now, one would think, if you say liquid death, poison, but, this is a really interesting take on the phrase liquid death, or the concept. It's liquid death to thirst, and all it is sparkling water. Look at that. And there is a death head. So anything that has the word death, well, probably makes money. So let's see. I wanted to talk about my spiritual journey some more. And I realize that's a real boring kind of subject, but maybe I can take just a few more minutes. Last time I said something about that was when I was in grade school, and of course I was perplexed, by where did Cain find his wife, and there was a civilization already outside of Eden, that kind of thing, to the east of Eden. So even as a little guy, I was perplexed. But my parents, they are actually very religious. And as I talked before in a previous kind of video, is that religion in Germany is treated totally different. It's a state religion. In other words, there's a state tax for religion and so forth. And so we were professed Protestants. And in other areas, they're professed Catholics. And the money goes to the Catholics or it goes to the Protestants. And I'm not sure where the cats and dogs, in terms, they might have to make their own way, just through donation. So my parents actually decided that they liked the greater intimacy of a Protestant church that kind of emerged in Germany, and it was held in people's houses and so forth, and it was just a few people, and there was somebody preaching, and so it was called a New Apostolic Church, and so they, I think it was like every Wednesday evening they went to church. And that really appealed to them because my dad, not so much, but mom was, if we call somebody God-fearing, she was God-fearing. For instance, whenever she decided to, cut into a new loaf of bread, and the loaves were kind of oblong with us, so she would turn it on its back, and she would make the sign of the cross with a knife on the bread to bless our food, which is, it's a good thing. I mean, you can make fun of it if you so choose, but somebody's faith, is serious to them, and it should be respected. So anyway, their church going, I didn't want to go, and they didn't even ask me to go because maybe it was all adults and they didn't want somebody like me, in there, heckling them or something like that, although they wouldn't tolerate that. There was no heckling around the parents. So what did I do? Well, I decided to go to church. So I, because I wanted to know more about God, I knew there was something beyond what I could see. I didn't know that the universe, the visible universe to us, is only 5% of what's out there. I didn't know those things, but I knew that there was more, okay? How did I know that? Of course, I didn't know that. I believed there was more. And so, maybe God will tell me, or a priest or preacher would tell me. So in the town that I grew up in, we had a wonderful Protestant church, which used to be a Catholic church, when the area was Catholic, but when it decided to become Protestant, it became a Protestant church. And I think it was called the Stadt Kirche, which means the church in town, okay? And it's, stained glass everywhere, like a mini cathedral, but it was mini, it was small. So I went to church, and I found that I was the youngest guy going to church there. And I went on Sundays, I think it was like 11 o'clock in the morning or so, whenever I went to church, maybe a little earlier. But I went, And there were just a few people and, old people. And we had to sing, because the Lutheran churches, are big on singing, so we sang, And I probably sang the loudest, hoping to get some sort of an attention, from God, the priest, So I did that. And I did that for many months, actually. But you know what? All the time that I went, not one time did the pastor or anybody come up to me and say, "Hey, glad to see you. How can I be of service to you?" Because I am a servant of God. Or anything, that would just kind of make me feel welcome. No, I just went in, annoyed the people next to me with my loud singing, because I remember the looks. But that was it, That was it. So eventually, and it wasn't right away. I think, months or years, because, I really, wanted to give this Lutheran church a chance, to let God speak to me, let the priest or the preacher, minister, speak to me. And you know what? It just did not happen. So, with that, I'm going to leave you right now and look forward to another video. And I bid you farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. And may we infect the universe with us.